Since I started writing about film noir back in 1998 with my first book, Dark City, every so often I am approached by an African-American movie fan who asks me, are there any noir films that actually have black characters that aren't porters or bellmen or nightclub entertainers? And for the longest time, I had to say, not from the classic era, none that I am aware of. Well, I can change that opinion now, because I have seen Native Son, the original 1951 version of Native Son, adapted from Richard Wright's novel, and starring, amazingly, Richard Wright portraying his own fictional creation, Bigger Thomas. Now, the story of how this film has come to be presented here in Seattle, I'm now part of a bit of a campaign to get this film revived. This is what you're seeing tonight is not, in fact, the complete restoration of this film. A man in Buenos Aires named Fernando Martin Peña, who is also the person who is responsible for uncovering the complete version of Fritz Lang's Metropolis, actually has a 16mm print of Native Son that contains footage that is not in this version that has been restored by the Library of Congress. So we are trying to figure out a way to actually create a completely restored version of the film. When I was in Washington, D.C. last year, presenting the version of Noir City we do there, I was approached by a man named Edgardo Krebs, who's an Argentinian anthropologist, and he had Fernando's print of Native Son that I was able to see in a private screening at the AFI Theater, and he really wanted to ask me the simple question, do you think this is noir? And that was a very unusual screening, because I was alone in the theater just with Edgardo and another gentleman, Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozano, who I had no idea who this guy was or why he was at the screening, except I found out later he was the two-time president of Bolivia, and he was the assistant director on Native Son when he was younger, and was there to tell us stories and recount the history of the production of the movie. It's fascinating to realize that there are great literary works that have so much in common with the genre fiction upon which film noir is based. Last year we showed Alan Ladd's version of The Great Gatsby. Nobody thinks that F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel is anything close to noir. No one thinks really that Richard Wright's Native Son is a noir story, nor do they think the other film we'll show tonight, William Faulkner's Intruder in the Dust, is an example of genre fiction. But all of these books use a spine of crime fiction and something that is very, very familiar to noir to tell a much bigger, broader tale. And that is certainly the case with Native Son. As you saw in that film, the book was a sensation when it came out. Orson Welles and John Houseman staged a theatrical version of the film starring Canada Lee that was quite sensational. Richard Wright was a big movie fan, and I can tell you that I am positive through the research that I have done that he was very inspired by The Postman Always Rings Twice, and used many of the elements of that book to create the spine that would hold the story of Native Son together. There was no way, like all authors, he wanted the book to be made into a movie, but there was no way this film was ever going to be made in the United States. If you know the story, you know why. If you don't know the story, you'll see why when you see this film. A production was mounted in Buenos Aires in the 1940s, and a producer named Jaime Prados saw that film and was determined to, saw the stage play, and was determined to turn it into a film. And he raised the money to do this from investors. There was European money promised and some American money promised to the production, and their goal was to have the actor Canada Lee play the part of Bigger Thomas. It's a strange thing, because at that point Canada Lee was already 42 years old, and Bigger Thomas is a 20-year-old man in Chicago. And so he wasn't really right for the part, but he had the juice to play the part and to get the thing produced. but he decided he did not want to do it after all, and they were at risk of having the whole project fall through and the money withdrawn when the director, a transplanted Frenchman named Pierre Chanel, who was working with Jaime Prades, turned to Richard Wright himself and said, "Why don't you play the part?" Which Wright thought was absolutely absurd, but Chanel challenged him and said, "You don't have to act, you wrote it, you just have to get in front of the camera and feel what you wrote." Now, we'll leave it up to other people to determine the quality of Richard Wright's acting abilities, but there's no question that this is an absolutely astounding historical document. I mean, it's rare enough to see a black character as the protagonist of a feature film made in 1950. But to see something that so closely resembles, I mean, it doesn't even, what am I saying? It doesn't resemble film noir. It's almost definitive film noir. And it really is a pretty remarkable document. So I leave it to other people to determine the overall entertainment value and quality of the film, but I will tell you that this is an absolutely amazing cultural artifact that you are about to see. And I'm just really, really proud to be associated with its revival. I'm hoping that we can get some steam under this so that we can actually get a complete restoration of the film. And having said all that, you're going to experience something that you have not experienced before. So enjoy, if you can. Native Son. Thank you.